Now, we come to George H.W. Bush. This is Daddy Bush. The way I keep them separated, because the son has the middle initial of W, but in any type of family, the head of the household is the dad. So the one with the H in his name, Howard, is going to be the eldest Bush, the dad Bush, okay? This is video one. This is going to be his domestic things as well as oil, which is a major factor. The Bush family actually had a lot of oil dealings. They're from Texas. Not saying everybody from Texas deals with oil, but a lot of people do. Okay, not the first president to have oil. Lyndon Baines Johnson had oil. Several others. Okay, so don't think this is unique to the Bushes. Okay. Now, in the election of 1988, it is George H.W. Bush against a man named Michael Dukakis. As you can tell, not really close. Bush wins pretty handily. Okay. He was unique in the fact that he's one of the only presidents who was a vice president to be elected. Very rarely do we see a vice president come out of, say, 8 years in the White House and win. It doesn't happen that often, but it does here. Now, Bush, however, will be a one and done, the Daddy Bush, and we're going to see why that happened. Now, famously, to get the support of big businesses and conservatives alike, Bush gets up and says, "Read my lips, no new taxes." Ultimately, as the economy is taking a downfall in the 80s, he's going to have to go back on those words, and so that kind of kills his political career. He has to break his promise. Okay. Now, in the late 80s, really kind of mid 80s, we have the rise of the me generation, also known as the yuppies. Yuppies stands for Young Urban Professional, and these are the people who move back into the cities, take these big corporation jobs, and this is kind of the first time we hear the names Coach and Burnberry and just different names that have been thrown around for this. Now, some yuppies of the me generation are also going to create major empires. Arthur Blank is going to create Home Depot. We have the creation of kind of the Walmart supercenters. We have the creation of Best Buy, the late Circuit City, which is now gone. Sports Authority, which is now bankrupt as well. Some of these are bankrupt, okay? But they create these vast empires. And they, again, a lot of people saw it as maybe a return to the industrialization we talked about in the 1900s. And in fact, there's a lot of parallels there, okay? Now, we get into something really interesting here. George H.W. Bush will appoint his second African American to the Supreme Court named Clarence Thomas. When Clarence Thomas goes to be nominated, and someone who worked for him, an aide, was named Anita Hill. And Anita Hill will accuse Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment. And there's a big, long, drawn-out thing, accuses him of, I think it's something as gross as like putting a pubic hair on a Coke can, something ridiculous like that. Ultimately, it goes through, the Senate hears about all this, and they decide there's no wrongdoing, so Clarence Thomas is there. Now, Clarence Thomas, in the many years he has served on the Supreme Court, is known as Silent Clarence. He really doesn't say much. He doesn't offer many opinions. He agrees with most stuff, but he will not be the author of many decisions. So, kind of unique in that aspect. Now, Daddy Bush's crowning achievement is called the American with Disabilities Act, or ADA. Now, disabled Americans have been cared for really since FDR and the New Deal, the Great Society, but they still are lacking a lot of opportunities. So the ADA is to provide a wide range of services and opportunities for people with disabilities to experience life. This is why you have handicap ramps on the sidewalks. This is why you have handicap bathrooms. This is why aisles and handicap parking places, etc. The whole idea is to give them more mobility and more opportunities to experience American life and not be shut down simply because they can't see or can't speak or can't walk. All right? So that's a major plus for George H.W. Bush. Okay? We also have our last amendment passed here in the late 80s, and that will be the 27th Amendment. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it took them 2 200 years. 200 years to get this. It's actually proposed in 1789, not passed until 1989. What is the big deal here about this one? This said that Congress cannot increase nor decrease their salary once the session has started. So say they go in and they go, well, there's really nothing here. We're getting paid way too much money. Let's decrease our salary. Can't do that. Or they can't say, we have a lot to get done. We're going to spend a lot of time. Let's increase our salary. And so that's kind of a unique thing in the fact that it took that long for them to get it up there. Now, also in 1989, we have the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Exxon Valdez is near Alaska, okay? Valdez was where it was going in Alaska. Exxon was the name of the company. They overfilled this boat to where when you overfilled the big boat, it flipped over. When it flipped over, the oil spilled into the environment, causing a major environmental disaster. Tons of shoreline is going to be polluted. Animal life is going to die and or suffer extremely at this. And it's all kind of in the name of greed, more or less. Now, as bad as this one was, and I'm going to bring it up here, I'm jumping much further here. In the 2000s, we have the Deep Horizon oil spill. Okay? Put another way for you, and you can see it there. Exxon Valdez was 11 million gallons of oil. That's a lot. Deep Horizon is 206 million gallons. Put another way, it could fill the state of California 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. That's a lot of oil. This was in the Gulf of Mexico, and this was not a boat flipping over, but rather an oil rig exploding. Now, the reason it exploded is the second part of this, and I'm not making this word up. It's called fracking. All right? Fracking is where on these oil rigs you dig down into the bed, and you're shaking up the oil shell, kind of creating a mini earthquake, if you will, trying to drive the oil up. If you do this too much, however, it becomes unstable. That's what happened here. Too much oil came through too quick. It caused the rig to explode. People died, and then the oil just kept coming out and coming out and coming out, and it made its way all the way up the shoreline of the Gulf of Mexico. Louisiana was hit probably the hardest, but it was in Texas, it was in Mississippi, Alabama, parts of the Georgia shoreline, I guess, the Panhandle of Florida. And this is horrible, and this is something that's still being cleaned up today. This is probably the worst ecological disaster to happen in the United States since the Dust Bowl. A lot of people have been affected by this, and in fact, famously here, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, will actually offer up the biggest lawsuit against a company. This was BP Oil, and to date, BP Oil has recognized their fault, and they are trying to do some things, but it's not where the people would kind of want stuff done, all right? In class, we're going to really kind of jump into these oil spills and study them and look at them, but we'll save it there, all right? So that was the first video. The next one is going to be about his foreign affairs, all right?